Welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijoma. And right before we begin, I'd like to let you know that if you enjoy these conversations and you want to support the podcast, please go to convome.com/support and you'll be able to do so there. And now, on to our conversation. I'd like to give a shout out to Megan of Flaming Feminist Candles. She is the one who recommended Astrid as a podcast guest in response to the Instagram post I put out asking for people to recommend others for the podcast. So thanks, Megan. Megan's Instagram handle is @Flaming Feminist Candles, and I will put a link to it in the show notes for this episode. Please do check her out on Instagram and also check out her Shopify store too. It's flaming-feminist-candles.myshopify.com. I will have a link to that as well in the show notes for this episode. Thanks, Megan. My guest this week is Astrid, and she runs the Etsy shop EweniqueAstrid. Astrid was a recommended guest for the podcast when I put out a call on Instagram for people to tag anybody that they wanted to hear on the podcast. And oh man, I meant to mention who asked for Astrid, and I'll get that name just so I can give you a shout out. But in the meantime, Astrid, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this opportunity.
Well, I'm so glad to have you, and congratulations on being nominated. I was very blown away by the responses to that particular post. And so everyone who was recommended, I was just thrilled to reach out to. So thank you so much for saying yes. And can you tell us about yourself? How would you describe yourself and what you do on Etsy? Do you consider yourself a crafter, a maker, more of an artist type?
So how I tend to describe myself is a weaver, spinner, and garment designer, and overall just free spirit and creator. So I mostly sell things made with my hand-woven material that I've taken thread and turned into fabric and then sewn into some form of a product.
And how long have you been doing that?
I first learned years ago. I got introduced to crochet at the age of 7, and that led me down a giant rabbit hole of learning to spin, which is making your own yarn, and then weaving and so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah. So when did Etsy come into the picture for you?
So I don't remember specifically. I had been selling a little bit I started with Facebook, and I was working through PayPal to transfer money and things like that. So I was already making sales. For me, Etsy was really just a way to manage it better and to have things a lot more well organized, and to just have, it was just seemed like a great platform and it had everything I needed.
So when you say you were first selling on Facebook, was it through like the Facebook shops, or was it through your personal account just from posting your creations online?
So I did not have a shop set up. In fact, I only set up one quite recently. It was way more challenging to do than I expected it to be. But I had a business account, and really, I was just posting my creations, and every once in a while, if someone was interested, or if I really wanted to promote something for sale, I'd then guide them to PayPal, and that was how I was processing things for a while until it just didn't really seem all that practical, and then Etsy seemed like a way better option.
Yeah. So far, would you say that you have enjoyed your experience on Etsy?
Definitely. It's pretty amazing. A lot of people have issues with the fees, but I
Yeah.
have no problem with it because of the amount that it does for me. I mean, it arranges the shipping and prints the labels and helps me with all that. Um, and it really just is a way better to organize, keep track of inventory. I've also had tons of people to tell me to start my own website to avoid the fees, but I just love Etsy. So far, it really has been an amazing experience.
Yeah. When you first started to consider coming onto Etsy, knowing that it was going to be a more seamless selling experience, did you have any reservations? Like perhaps having to deal with competition, or were you comfortable just bringing your crowd over with you from Facebook?
I really didn't have any reservations. It was kind of just to see how things went. I mean, I was really just shooting my shot with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if not much came out of it, I was fine going back to Facebook, but it turned out amazing. And, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Do you remember when the first sale came in? Was it one that you had directed there, or was it just like a what do we call it? Like a stranger sale?
Most of my sales I direct myself. So about
Okay.
80%, according to the stats on Etsy, come from links that I have mainly on my Instagram now. And so I can see
Wow.
that people are mostly coming from there, which is pretty amazing. I think that I'm able to post projects and do what I love. And then towards the end, I've been doing pre-orders now where I say, all right, this fabric, now that it's off the loom, I list a pre-order and send people there to finish their purchase. And yeah.
I love what you're doing on Instagram, I have to say, because first of all, you have so many followers, so it just makes sense that you're driving most of your traffic. And how did you grow that following? Was it an offshoot of Facebook because they're tied in together, or was it just more organic?
So it really isn't from Facebook. I only have about 3,000 on Facebook, which in
Mm.
comparison is not a lot. Um, but I really just, when Reels started on Instagram and when that really became popular, I again, it was kind of like Etsy. I just tried it to see what would happen, and it went really well. And for me, my following doesn't really come steady.
Mm.
I've been stuck where I am right now for like a couple of weeks, which is mostly because we just moved, and so I wasn't really posting and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while, you just have something that goes viral, and I gain a couple thousand followers, and so yeah, pretty much. It doesn't really come steady. So
Yeah. And for anyone who wants to check out and follow Astrid on Instagram, she is EweniqueAstrid, and it's spelled EweniqueAstrid, and just the same as her Etsy store. Astrid has over 115,000 followers, so she's obviously doing something really right over there on Instagram. So do you focus mainly on Reels? Because when Reels started, all I kept hearing was Instagram wants you to post Reels. They want Reels, Reels, Reels. Did you just focus on that because that's what Instagram or the algorithm wanted?
yeah, pretty much. You are definitely right in that Instagram preferred Reels when starting. If you were posting Reels, they were definitely pushing it in the algorithm more than they were still photos. There were some
Mm-hmm.
people that had a huge following even before Reels.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't start with Reels, then they kind of just stayed where they were.
Yeah.
And less viral videos and less popular photos and things like that. So Reels has really helped me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And I will have links to Astrid's Etsy shop, of course, and her Instagram account too, so you can go check her out. Astrid, what does a typical day look like for you when it comes to managing your time and running your business? What do you focus on, or basically, how does your day go in the life of running your Etsy shop?
So I get asked this quite a bit. And so I am a homeschooled student, because I get asked how I balance it with school also quite a bit. But I'm a homeschooled student, but I'm also an unschooler and an interest-led learner. So basically, when I'm interested in something, whether it's a new weaving technique or just something crazy related to fiber and yarn, I will research it as much as I possibly can. And that is, for me, the extent of my learning. But then that also fully ties into Etsy, because when I do a project, it's not always specifically planned for Etsy. Usually I plan projects for a garment, and that way I can have my hand-woven garment, which is what I truly love to make. And then I always make a couple extra yards of fabric. That way I can turn that into product for my Etsy. So have found a way that works well for me to do what I love, and then also be able to run my business and really just keep generating enough. I mean, I'm 13. I don't, pay rent or pay for a car. But I do have enough money that I can still fund my interests.
Astrid, you mentioned that you're an unschooler. For anyone who isn't familiar with that term, what does it mean?
So unschooling is a version of homeschooling where basically you're never working from a textbook, or which it is different for everyone, but basically you're never working from a textbook or a really specific class. It's not the same as having school hours during the day and sitting down and working on it. It's when everything becomes school, and whatever you're interested in, that becomes your learning experience.
I like that, actually. So life becomes your classroom because everything is experiential.
Exactly.
More or less. One of the things I like that you're doing on Etsy is like pre-ordering, where where folks can buy or pre-order something that you haven't yet made, but you're going to. How did you get the idea to do that? And how did you know it was something that would work?
So that's something that now has been working really well for me. And it's because as I'm posting things on Instagram and people are basically just really hyped up about it, and the excitement, and even if they go viral or if they don't, I know that if people are seeing that on their page, if they follow me, then they're going to be interested in buying it, hopefully. And so it's really easier for me to do it then, rather than because a lot of times if it's for a garment, I then take a couple weeks to sew it. And then after that, I'll take another 2 weeks to make the bags. So it really does take a while. And if I waited until the excitement was over after with that fabric, then no one would really want to be buying them. So I then did the pre-orders and then just set them for a couple weeks out. That way I knew I'd have them done by that time, but it was already set, and people knew they were getting what they were already excited about while it was active on Instagram.
I like that idea. When I saw that, I was like, wow, she's making this work. And I think it's brilliant. Where does your inspiration for what you create come from? Like the designs you use and the fabric?
So that's an excellent question, because I have really weird inspiration. Like I'm planning a project for next fall that is inspired by a jellyfish called a lion's mane jellyfish. And it is one of the biggest jellyfish in the ocean, and it's also bioluminescent, which means it glows in the dark without the help of a UV light and things like that. So I'll be doing a project that is inspired by that, not only in colors, but I'll be representing that bioluminescence with fiber optics, which is a part of technology that I'll be incorporating into weaving. And so I get inspiration from the most random places. I've done a project based off a rooster, and for some reason I did a thing for birds for a while. So I did a cardinal, a blue jay, and a rooster. And not necessarily things that are around me in everyday life. I know that's something that a lot of people get inspired by. But for some reason, for me, I get inspired by things that are very far away in the deepest depths of the ocean. And that's just what excites me.
I love that. How far in advance typically do you plan? Because this is for the fall. How far ahead do you look for when you're going to, start a new design based on a fresh inspiration?
So it takes me quite a while because I go through what I kind of call the thinking phase, which is where I don't even start with anything hands-on, and I really just think about every single aspect of the project, and I think through every step. And I really just picture what I want every single detail of the garment to be, or the fabric and things like that, so that I can be sure that everything is exactly the way I think it should be. And so that I will spend months doing. And a lot of times it does take a while to do projects, especially if it's for, I've done quite a few projects for magazines now. And so those have to be done quite far in advance. And I've got one that won't come out until next fall, but I'll start at the beginning of this year. And so it really is quite a big time frame, where it's more than just a couple of weeks in order to get something finished, even though I'm only a lot of times working on things hands-on for a couple weeks or a month or two.
Wow. You are so impressive for what you're able to do. You sound so organized and so like you have everything just down pat. Does being very well organized and having a system in place come naturally to you, or did you do how they have these courses where you can learn how to, plan out your life and project planning? How did that shake out for you?
I think a lot of that comes naturally, and I'm guessing that's part of being homeschooled. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tough question to answer, but I've always just been very organized, and I love my projects, and I love to strategize and really take my time on them.
Yeah. How do you determine pricing for your products?
For me, I kind of take in cost of materials, as well as time and skill, and then put it all together, which if you look at my Etsy, I have most of my bags basically broken into 4 categories: smalls, small premium, large, and large premium. The regulars are just if it's a commercial material, meaning yarn that I've purchased and then woven. But if it's a premium, it's often a yarn that I've spun from hand, or it was a more expensive commercial yarn. So I've got some silks and things like that on there. And so it's really broken up quite evenly for me. And rather than having everything done individually, that way I can have those 4 listings set up for most of the time, and then just change out the bags based off the fabrics that I'm working on. Okay.
And in addition to your bags, you also have a coloring book that you put together also, which I think is fantastic.
Thank you. I put that together because I over the summer went to a conference that is a huge weaving conference organized by a weaving guilds that is all across America. And they had a loom there that I've known about for a while, but I really fell in love with it when I got to see it in person. And it's a partially computerized loom in order to assist in the design aspect, because design-wise, it can do some really amazing things. However, it does cost like a small fortune. It's $26,000. So,
whoa.
Yeah. Which a lot of people picture looms as being super pricey, and that's like a really drastic case. Like, it's probably one of the most expensive looms out there. So the coloring book was my way to put an effort into getting that loom. So I now have a down payment on the loom, but I won't be getting it until February.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited. It's an amazing loom.
Yeah. Oh, I can only imagine. Is it one that you have to get training on how to use, or you know how it's going to function already?
So I was lucky enough, right before we moved, there was a local yarn shop in Texas called Yarnorama, and she had just gotten one like the week before we moved out of town. And so I got to do a project on it just to get familiar with it. She has so many looms that hers isn't quite as huge or insane as the one I plan to get, or the one that I got. But at least I got to work on it and hear about her experience setting it up. And it was way better than just seeing it at the conference and then it showing up one day and having no clue what was going on. Yeah,
yeah. How do you find conferences to attend? Like, what are you plugged into communities where you hear about these conferences that are very specific to your craft?
Yes. So there's an amazing large community of weavers, and there's also a lot of guilds all over the country. And I'm a member of quite a few of them, even if I don't live in the area. I'm a member of like 10 guilds at this point for weaving and spinning and even sewing with your hand woven, a whole variety of guilds. And some of them either put on these events or just you hear about them. And so they're really amazing. I've been to quite a few at this point, which I'm very lucky to have done. And there's one that I'm really excited about for next fall. And so there's definitely quite a few and a lot going on when it comes to conferences.
Yeah. Do you find that you tend to attend most, or are you picky about which ones you will go to, at least in person?
I am a little picky, mostly because it can just be expensive to go, and it's a lot of time to take, even if it's just a weekend conference or something like that. But there are some really big ones that I've been to. Like there was one in Knoxville over the summer, one in Maryland in the spring. That's a pretty big one. It's Maryland Sheep and Wool. And then there's Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool, which I'll go to next fall. Hopefully, I'm really excited about that one.
Yeah. Wow. Good for you. Do you think when it comes to Etsy that you have a lot of competition, and do you spend time looking at your competitors, or are you just really honed in on what you're doing and you can easily block out the noise?
So I haven't noticed a ton of competitors, even outside of Etsy, mostly because a lot of people just don't sew with their hand-woven fabric, especially when it comes to product and bags and even the garments that I make. Overall, there just isn't a ton of that, so I really haven't scoped out competitors. And plus, since most of it comes from my own Instagram, it's not like people are searching in Etsy and there's a gazillion results. It's mostly just me that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I was recently telling someone who wanted to start selling on Etsy and was concerned about the competition. I said, you have to do something just unique enough that you stand out, because it's almost impossible to not have anyone else already on the platform selling something similar. And you just embody that exactly. Like, it doesn't get much more unique than what you've set up on Etsy and how you're doing it. And I know you mentioned earlier that, you've been asked before about having a website, but you don't currently feel the need to do that right now.
So I do have a website, but I really don't do it much.
Mm-hmm.
I've got so much else going on, really, that between social media and Etsy, and then I pop up in little other places like this podcast and magazines and things like that, that I really wouldn't have much to put on a website, let alone the time to manage it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, for your magazine appearances, first of all, congratulations. How are they finding you? Through Instagram, through Etsy, through Facebook? Do you know how you get on their radars?
So a lot of time it's through Instagram, and sometimes it's even from conferences. But it's a large but close-knit community of weavers and fiber artists overall. So a lot of them I already knew about. Some I reach out to, actually quite a few I reach out to. But really, once you know the people out there and are familiar with them, and you're familiar with you, or they're familiar with you, then it's really easy to, or not easy, it can become simpler to apply to magazines and submit articles and things like that.
Yeah. And usually when you are featured, do you see a boost in sales, a significant boost in sales that came as a result of being featured?
So the magazines honestly don't really contribute to my Etsy that much. The other thing that can be a little annoying about magazines, but obviously it's totally normal and how things should go, is that I'm not allowed to post the finished results until the magazine comes out. So that can be months and months of a gap until it finally gets released and I can share. And again, before, when we were talking about the hype and when people are actually excited about a project, people get excited when I'm working on it and they see me posting tons of content about it, because really I need to have things to post about. And then it's nothing about that project for months until they finally get to see whatever the result is. And so then it's not really the same. People don't always get as excited about it. And so the same goes for Etsy and Instagram.
Okay. Creatively speaking, do you ever find yourself in a rut, and how do you work your way out?
Honestly, I really don't. I mean, when I read that question, I was like, I have like 5 ideas a day, and it takes weeks and weeks to execute every single one.
Right.
So I really have more ideas than I do time, but which isn't always fun. But at least I can still have time to make my favorite ones.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on the struggle of having more ideas than time, and the frustration that comes from, not being able to get to everything that pops into your mind, or, my mind. What's so far one lesson about selling on Etsy that you've learned that you think will be beneficial to someone else listening who, might come, have that same experience?
So, I really don't. I mean, Etsy hasn't provided any giant revelations for me. And it's really just become an amazing way for me to keep doing what I love and to continue to be able to afford my art, basically. But I don't really have any specific advice. I mean, yeah, I really don't, honestly.
Okay, no problem. Is there one thing about selling on Etsy that you really truly enjoy? And then on the other side of that question, anything about selling on Etsy that maybe on the platform that you'd like to see them provide that doesn't currently exist?
There isn't much. I mean, I really love the way Etsy is right now, and it's really helped me to be able to structure my selling and overall my product inventory. But I'm really happy with the way it is now, and it's worked really well for me so far.
Wonderful. I bet the folks at Etsy will be happy to hear that. I think they should feature you in their blog at some point, and your story, just because of how unique what you're doing is. For any new sellers who aren't yet on the platform, that might have reservations, would you have any advice for them, or maybe even not any reservations, but advice about just, how to get on Etsy or be successful on Etsy, or just make it a good experience for them like it has been for you?
So for me, I went into Etsy with no expectations whatsoever. And so I think there's some people go into Etsy really hoping for some amazing sales and relying on it for a lot.
Yeah.
And I have never been that way with Etsy. For me, it's always just been, if I can sell something amazing, the more, the better, obviously. But if I don't sell something on Etsy, I do have other sources of income. And so, I guess it might just take a while to get settled with Etsy. It's definitely something new, and it's a lot at first, but it's an amazing platform once you understand it pretty well.
That's so true. Yeah, understanding it makes a whole difference in your experience on it. Are there any tools that you use, or resources that you use to run your Etsy shop that you found particularly helpful that you can share?
I guess if Instagram counts, then that is my number one tool and resource.
Absolutely.
Because most of those people are loyal followers from Instagram that if they love a project enough, they will go and help me out by buying something on Etsy. And so I don't have anything really Etsy specific, but Instagram has been an amazing help when it comes to my Etsy.
I love that, because one of the things I was recently asked a question about what's one thing that I've seen as a common thread with sellers who are successful or doing well on Etsy. And I said, one thing I've noticed is the people who pick a thing to get really good at tend to find success, more success, and faster too. And in your case, when it comes to social media, Instagram has just proven to be the best for you. I know for some it's Pinterest, and for some other people I've talked to, it was TikTok. But like you, they pick a place and they go very deep into it, and like you, build a community that's very loyal and becomes easier to sell to, because that's where you're serving up your best to them. So yes, Instagram counts. Astrid, what is the best way people can connect with you or check out what you're doing online?
That's a great question. I mean, Instagram, again, is really just where I am for the most part. Yeah. Everything that's going on goes on Instagram.
Yes. Great. And I will have links to Astrid's Etsy shop as well as her Instagram. And so you can connect with her and check her out. Astrid's Etsy shop is EweniqueAstrid, and I will spell it in case you have your phone in your hand or you're sitting at your desktop and you want to check it out. It's EweniqueAstrid, and it's the same as her Instagram. And again, links will be in the show notes for this episode. Astrid, thank you so much for taking time out to have this conversation with me, to share your story, and to just spend time with us on the podcast. It's been really nice getting to know you, and congratulations on all you've accomplished on Etsy, and I know you'll have fun with that new loom.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I got this opportunity and that I got to talk to a new platform of people.
Yes. So everyone, please do go check out Astrid's Etsy shop and follow her on Instagram too. And I thank you for listening to this week's episode. I will be back again next week with another episode.